Joining us from Washington, D.C. is Eyre. He's a distinguished diplomatic fellow at the Middle East Institute, and he's a former senior diplomat on the U.S. negotiating team for the 2015 Iran nuclear deal, known as the JCPOA. Really good to have you back on Al Jazeera. I wanted to ask you about the messaging that we're getting from the United States. Now, we understand, as Kimberly Hawk was just describing, that Steve Witco had put on the table a suggestion that Iran would agree to enrichment below, I think it's 5% purity. It was geared towards medical, specifically medical uses and so on. In his State of the Union speech, Donald Trump was very critical of Iran, veered away sharply from the kind of slightly softer approach that Witko appeared to be taking. How does Iran, do you think, try to balance out the messages that it's getting from the US?
I think a lot of the messaging we're hearing, Rob, is to other publics and not necessarily to the other side of the negotiating table. Each side is in ongoing contact with the other, and they know what the red lines are. And the distressing fact is the red lines haven't changed, not just in the last 3 rounds, but in the 5 rounds prior to last year's war. So if the United States insists on zero enrichment and no enriched uranium in Iran, there's not going to be a deal. If the United States can modify its red lines to permit some level of indigenous enrichment in Iran, there's a slight possibility.
I mentioned before that you were a part of the team for the JCPOA back in 2015. Trump has already said that he wants to make a better deal than the deal made by Barack Obama and the team back at that point. What, in your estimation, would be the minimum requirement needed for Donald Trump to be able to say that he has a better deal than Barack Obama?
Well, that's the million-dollar question, Rob. I think at one point, and perhaps still now, he thinks the differentiating characteristic would be Iran not being able to have any enrichment. So if he can get that, that would be a win. But with President Trump, we've seen that he can claim things that aren't necessarily true as a win. So it could well be the case that he settles for essentially the same deal as the JCPOA, which he ripped up, and maybe he'll walk away and call it a win. He'll do that if he's genuinely concerned about the adverse consequences of a military strike in Iran. But it seems to be the case that that's not going to be the guiding factor in his decisions. So it's going to be tough.
Over the last few days, there's been less and less reference, at least publicly, towards ballistic missile production by Iran, to the actions of Iran's proxies and Iran's support of those. It seems to be, at least, as I say, publicly focused towards the nuclear issue. Are we getting to a point where this, in one respect, could be the off-ramp that both sides have been looking for, that they are focusing on this specific specific issue, and therefore that makes it easier for the negotiations in one respect to be focused?
Well, you're certainly right, Rob. If the negotiations are just about Iran's nuclear program, which President Trump has, since he's been in office, stressed is the most important bilateral issue, Iran must not have a nuclear weapon, then that's a certain degree of difficulty. But you're right. If you add missiles and proxies to that, negotiation becomes much harder, if not impossible. What the conventional wisdom seems to be is that President Trump is seeking first a nuclear deal. It's an open question as to whether he'll then seek deals on missiles and proxies. But the last key variable is, what does Iran get out of it in return? President Trump seems to be saying, accept and we won't bomb you. But Iran wants sanctions lifted. And I don't know if that's still on the table.
Just very briefly, you and I spoke when the last round of talks were held, and the last time we spoke, you said that the build-up of military forces that we've seen in and around the Middle East had limited effect when it came to what was actually being talked about in the rooms where the talks are being held. Now, since then, the US forces, particularly in the region, have got significantly larger. Is that still your assessment? Is it still having limited impact on the substance of the talks that are going on?
Yes, it's still my position. There's a good saying in Persian, death once, whaling once, in the sense that Iran gets that the U.S. has enough military power in the region to cause massive damage to whatever the U.S. wants to cause massive damage to. So much like the new sanctions today don't add any pressure really to Iran, more planes, more destroyers, more AWACS, though it will help the U.S. do what it wants to do, doesn't add marginal pressure on Iran. They know they face serious military damage and destruction.
Once again, we really appreciate you giving us the benefit of your expertise in this. Alan Eyre, thank you very much indeed.
Thank you, Rob.
Don't miss out on the full picture. Subscribe to Al Jazeera for reliable news and expert insights. Like, share, stay ahead.